guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we will take a look at some new JustNoHOA content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, HOA Vandalizes Father's Truck, Gets Immediate Justice. This happened a few years back. Our HOA has always been known to be sneaky and to flat out give false accusations on homeowners, especially in this day with security cameras, and we can pretty easily spot out who the investigators are. Most recently, a homeowner was told she was supposed to get approval before she started re-shingling her roof. The thing is, her roof hasn't been re-shingled in 10 years, and she had no plans to do it. Things like that. Call it just a mistake, call it malicious. Well, a few years ago, we had our time to shine. It was a simple morning. I was still temporarily living with my father at the time. Well, one morning we decided to go out to get groceries when we found that his pickup truck had been smashed into. Nothing was taken, it was just smashed into. In fact, I still have pictures from that day, just before the cops arrived. Cops arrive. They do some investigating and found that a rock inside the truck was from a house down the street. Unfortunately, they couldn't get them to admit to the crime, nor could they prove it was even them. Understandable, criminals will grab things that they find, but it was suspicious. The rock, I should say, was a special kind of rock that no one else in the neighborhood had, some round polished type. Very unique. After this incident, I installed a security camera on his house. Well, not 2 days later, we got an HOA violation for a vehicle eyesore that needs to be removed. Just 2 days later. I'm confused how such a letter could have been written up so fast, but I started to suspect foul play. One day we were home and had a knock at the door. The HOA actually called a code inspection officer. The week hadn't even been over yet, so the parts to fix the truck weren't delivered yet. We weren't paying expedited shipping for damages we didn't cause, and the truck was so old insurance would probably just total it. The truck is sentimental to him, so he wasn't going to get rid of it. It still ran great. Code inspection tells my father that vehicles which do not run need to be removed. They both stop talking and take a second, and both almost say at the same time, "Don't I know you?" Turns out the code inspection officer went to the same church as my father and knew each other. This isn't the malicious compliance yet. We are only just beginning. The officer tells my father if he can show the truck starts, he's going to write it up as being in code. My father starts the truck just fine as the engine isn't damaged. He tells him to go on with his day and to have a good one. At this point, we are furious because we are starting to suspect the HOA may have done this, as there's no way they could have possibly known so fast. Unfortunately, our turn of the street had no neighbors with security cameras until I installed one on our house, so it caught nothing specific to our incident. Down the street, these people supposedly broke into a car as well, but the camera on their house was unable to see anything. Damn. Here's where the fun begins. Fast forward a couple months after nothing happened, I decided to install a new dash cam in my car. I found a good one that uses very little power off the battery and can activate if there's any bumps to the car, even if the car is off. It just needs to be wired straight to the battery for this. It's a think where. A few days later, we got a violation notice for our mailbox being crooked. It wasn't crooked much, but I do remember it recently having an angle. Odd, I could just fix it, but my car was aiming straight at the mailbox. I'm thinking, no, this couldn't be possible. It only records if there's a bump. I take out the memory card and apparently, I either didn't configure it correctly, but it was recording the whole time. It never went into sleep mode. I watched as the investigator walks up to the mailbox and pushes it crooked, then writes down on his tablet his findings and takes a picture for records. I'm appalled at what I see. I have the proof I needed. Now, for the malicious compliance. They wanted us to come to the board meeting and present what is going on at our address. We haven't told them yet that we had the pictures, but to summarize real fast how our HOA works, the board hires an outside company to do the grunt work. Let's call it Bentry Management. We go to the meeting and sit down. Bentry Management has the one in control of our account, and I swear to you she looked like a Karen, so the name fits for her. As time goes by in the meeting, we get to discuss what is happening at our house. We present the timelines and tell them about the truck being smashed, and just 2 days later we get a letter. We ask what dates the investigator was out for that time. Karen refuses to answer it. She argues ignorantly that we should keep better care of our stuff as if it was our fault. Then comes the mailbox incident. We tell her that we have reasons to believe that the investigator is the one that is causing damages to our property and is harassing us. Karen denies this and says that is impossible, and that she knows him personally. "Oh, is that so?" I ask. She says, "Yes, why?" I then pull out my laptop out of my book bag that I had been hiding, open it up to the video file already loaded, and show it to the entire board. Enter Exhibit A. I said out loud and played the video. Karen's face is bright red. She says that is not her investigator. I then also pulled out the letter out the mailbox, which was complete with date. It matches the cooked-on timestamp on the video. She still tries to claim it's not them. "No, it's a coincidence, I'm sorry, but you have a vandal, and it's not us." "It's not." I let the video play, knowing she's falling into a pit hard right now. As the man walks towards my car, you can plain as day see Bentry Management on his shirt. She's no longer red now, she's white as a ghost. And the board looks over at her and asks what she has to say about this. Karen is silent and has nothing except a few noises, which I assume was her brain trying to comprehend what just happened. I then proceed to bring up a previous case which I happen to remember before we left for the meeting, where we had a grass violation beside our house. Now this area they were claiming was actually not visible from the sidewalk due to the house's shape. I asked point blank, "Has at any time your investigators walked on our property, illegally trespassing?" Knowing as per their rules, they aren't allowed to do that. Karen is visibly shaking now and mutters out, "No, of course not." With her head down, unable to maintain eye contact with me. She probably feels that I have more evidence, but unfortunately, I didn't. So I ask again. She asks, "Why?" Our neighbor, whom are lawyers, literally next door to us where the side of this wall was, stands up and says, "Actually, that's not true. I have witnessed one of your investigators go between our houses and poke around the trash bins." Bingo. I didn't even realize she had this information. I couldn't have asked for better timing. Karen at this point just starts arguing with our neighbors about no proof. The board proceeds to apologize for the incident, and they were going to discuss what is going to happen in the future about this. At that point, the meeting is over. A month passes, and we get a letter that a new person will be in charge for Bentry Management and new investigators. She was fired that night. Since she was fired, my father tells me we only get the occasional blip of errors, but they correct it immediately and don't bother us really anymore. Next one is titled, "My HOA are incompetent scum. My father stalks them until they resign." So, I live in a relatively new suburban neighborhood with a homeowners association, HOA, that has been slowly getting more annoying. My father, a paranoid, vengeful, Republican retired civil engineer, is the main disperser of the revenge. Here's a list of their earlier offenses. 1. About 5 years ago, they sent us a notice to move our garbage bins out of the street, and that if they were left outside of the backyard after garbage day for too long again, they would fine us. Our garbage bins were not in the street. We were also very good about putting our garbage bins away promptly after they sent us a warning after we let them out during a week-long vacation. They somehow mixed up our house with our neighbors. My dad spray painted our lot number on the bins so this wouldn't happen again. The rest of the neighborhood slowly followed suit. From what I hear, the security guard the HOA hired is also paid to look for infractions on each lot, but apparently is not paid enough to get the lot numbers right. So, this happened several times. 2. The light on our address number hasn't worked since the house was built. We bought immediately after it was finished, because the construction job was rather shoddy. 6 years later, somebody from the HOA finally noticed and told us we had to pay to fix it, even though it was due to an electrical fault on the part of the builders. They also demanded a picture to prove we fixed it. My father opened the box where the light was, put a glow stick in, and took a picture at night and sent it in. The address light seemingly fixed. They bought it. 3. They tried to force all members of the neighborhood into this poorly designed social network for our neighborhood. Nobody liked it, and the network was barely used even by the HOA. 4. Not announcing HOA meetings except a day or two before the meeting by posting the times on a dilapidated board at the park at the center of the neighborhood. The paper often falls off and blows away, so the meetings were not often attended by anybody until recently because of the big offense that follows. Here's the big one that set my dad off. There is apparently a clause in the HOA guidelines that every so often, we must have the house repainted. The first time to do this came up last year. There was a lot of shitty bureaucracy involved, like having to submit a request to do the mandated painting. and then the whole neighborhood was mandated to use these expensive, not particularly good paints that couldn't be bought anywhere nearby except from a posh, overpriced supplier some 100 miles away. My father, being a cheapskate, said duck that and got a small-time guy, real friendly, to do the job on the cheap and used paints that were one ton off, but were more durable and cheaper because they could be bought in bulk from the big store down the street. He does a great job in just 2 hot summer days, doing all the work with just him and, I believe, 2 others, all on the cheap. A few months later, when everybody else was repainting their houses, we get notice that our house is not painted according to code and submit a new request to repaint our house or face penalties. My dad was steaming, because he was pretty sure the only reason they required us to use those colors was because the paint company was paying them to, and the house looked great. He endured months of poorly managed bureaucracy. He kept sending the request to repaint the house, and they kept playing around, losing the request, not keeping him notified of the matter, delaying the processing until it neared the deadline to paint the house. If we overshot the deadline, we'd be fined. He demanded that they just fine him cough for using the wrong paint and not force him to repaint with the overpriced crap paint. They wanted to make an example of us and have him come before a disciplinary committee. My father wouldn't let this stand. While they kept playing bureaucratic games, my father started his revenge games. He got somebody in the HOA to tell him where the offices of their management were and went there to demand to speak with them to complain and ask for information on the proceedings. Because it was so far out of the way and hard to figure out where it was, and he made such a fuss, they panicked. He went again a week later, and they had beefed up security and denied him entry unless he had an appointment. When he met with the disciplinary committee, there was an armed security guard there. My father pulled out all his know-how as a civil engineer and told them that the paint they were using was subpar, overpriced, and it was clear that they had no experience in the field and needed a consultant. They politely declined his services and tried to get him to pin all the blame on the painter, which he refused to do as he authorized the painter to cheap out on the paint. As punishment, they force us to repaint in a different, much uglier color that is completely out of place for the neighborhood and was apparently designed for a completely different location. We get it, but my father won't let this go without them, knowing never to duck with him again. He starts calling/emailing them regularly to demand to know when the next HOA meeting is and berate them for not properly notifying the neighborhood by email or even regular mail/newsletters. Pretty sure this is a violation of the regulations, but they might be just barely fulfilling them with the half-assed posting the day before meetings mentioned earlier. He then starts attending every meeting and recording them. I join him and pretend to be unrelated to make it appear that more people were upset with them. Turns out they've been pissing off people all over the neighborhood, including refusing to let a family dispose of a diseased tree ruining their lot. I don't recall all the details, but I think the tree wasn't actually on their property, but rather an empty lot or a condemned lot next door, but it was damaging their garden and property. Doing nothing to deal with a hornet nest on a block set of mailboxes. The mailboxes are all set up in one conjoined block of boxes that was causing the mailperson to refuse to deliver the mail there, causing people to miss bills and important mail. Forcing at least 2 other houses who did the same as us to repaint in shitty colors. My dad met with these people and gathered their contact info. We had planned to organize with other angry neighbors to stage a coup once elections came around. After the first meeting, my father took the information he'd gathered on the people in charge of the HOA, took to the internet, and found much more. The second meeting he goes to, he shows with named placards for all of them, so the neighborhood could know not only their names and positions. They couldn't be bothered to do this themselves, but also their addresses and phone numbers, letting them know he knows who they are and where they live. This on top of his harassment by email and phone and at their office, to the point they had hired security guards to protect them from an angry old gun-owning man, must have been too much for this group of 30-something soccer moms. The next meeting, there's new HOA people. The president, vice president, and half the board have resigned. Turns out they were all a clique that used the HOA as more of a social club than a serious thing. My father is satisfied, and the new board starts taking action to actually help people in the neighborhood. Thanks for listening.